Either we are there or not, ITSP Magazine still gets the best stories. There are plenty of conferences and all sorts of events that spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, we sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com. Reversing Labs is the leading provider of explainable threat intelligence solutions that dissects complex file-based threats. Its hybrid cloud titanium platform enables digital business resiliency, detects new high-risk threat vectors, and automates SOC and threat hunting processes. Learn more at reversinglabs.com.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Hacker Factory podcast. I'm Phillip Wylie, your host. I refer to myself as the Hacker Maker because I have a passion for teaching and mentoring people, helping them get their start in offensive cybersecurity, pen testing, red teaming, or even bug bounty. Each episode, I have a unique and interesting guest, and this is not exception this week. I have my friend Abhi from India. Currently, he's not in India. He's visiting somewhere else, but he's got a really awesome story. And we met during some conferences last year, like during DEF CON and probably prior to that. And so we know each other because we both are very interested and passionate about education and red teaming. So he's got a really cool story, and I'm honored to have him as a guest today. Welcome, Abhi. Could you introduce yourself to our guests?
Hello, Philip. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the quick introduction. My full name is, I can start a formal intro, right?
Sure.
My full name is Abhijith B R, and I also known as the pseudonym ABX, or people tend to call me as AB or AB or Abhi, which is much easier to pronounce. And I do have nearly 12 years of experience in the information and cybersecurity industry. Right now, I'm managing offensive security operations and adversary simulation for a global or a US-based fintech company. So before joining this organization, I used to work with Nissan Motor Corporation, EY, and a couple of startups as offensive security, red team, pen tester positions. And we do manage a couple of offensive security communities in India. We do have a local DEF CON group called DEF CON Group Trivandrum. And we are going to organize Adversary Village at DEF CON this year. And recently I started a small initiative called tacticaladversary.io, which is supposed to be a blog, and a webcast for adversary tactics and red teaming stuff. And from an intro perspective, I think this is it.
Very cool. So, I know you have, a lot of people, one of the inspirations of this is, sometimes people hear the stories and they're able to say, okay, and this inspires people because they understand your background. Why don't you go back to the beginning, when your very beginnings, your start, when you started out, even you're like growing up and stuff, because I know you mentioned you have a unique childhood and past where you didn't have electricity, and then you went all the way to being, doing red teaming and all this. So, that story of how you got started, I think would be of interest to our listeners.
Sure, Philip, I can do that. So how are we going to do this? Do you have to start from the beginning, or, do you have to do it in a quick way, or how is it going to be?
It's up to you how you want to share that. So, you don't have to tell every step by step, but, I think some of the things that, maybe how you got started, because that's of interest, because people are trying to get started in the industry, and then to hear how someone got started, because, everyone sees you now as this highly skilled, knowledgeable red teamer, but they didn't know you before you got started there,
Yeah, sure. I can do that. As a beginning, I'm coming from deep south of India, a place called, it is a deep south state of India, which is called Kerala. And I'm from a lower middle class family. My father, he used to be, he was a rickshaw driver in India at that time, back in 20 years. So at the time, during the school time, I was very much into books. I used to read a lot of books, a lot of other articles and stuff. Obviously, everything was in our native language. And at that time, so I had an opportunity to read an article which was focused on a story of hackers or computer criminals. I think that was the highlight, right? It was there. It had different set of stories from different set of people, how they managed to get into a bank, steal money from there. How did they manage to do phone phreaking and stuff like that. So I was in my primary school that time. I really got into this stuff because the article had also mentioned a couple of radio hacking things, which I totally didn't understand at that time. But I was very much into that because I also had a transistor radio at that time. Because that was the only thing which I had in my home at that time, because we did not had electricity in my home, since I passed out from my high school. So that was the story. I had this huge interest in computers and everything, but my family, they were not in a state to buy me a computer or even get electricity in my home. So that was the current state. So from there, my school, they had this new computer lab, which was considered to be the most sacred place in the entire school. You'll have to remove your footwear when you enter the computer lab. You'll have to take turns, to touch the computer, to do something. You'll have to write your name down. The moderator have to, check it in, a lot of complex scenarios and, other stuff. And during that time, one of my friend's brother used to be a rich guy. He used to have a computer, old Windows computer, Windows 3.1, I suppose. So, there was a tough challenge. I had to copy a game from my school lab to, my friend's brother's computer using a floppy drive. So when I did that, but later it became a very big issue because the computer in the school, it didn't work after that. That became very big issue. We got called in the principal's office. A lot of stuff happened. So later, my friend's brother told me, that it was a computer virus. So that was the very first time I was hearing about, the term computer virus. I was in high school that time. So the initial story, the story I read about hackers and computer criminals, then now here is the term computer virus. I really got interested into that. I don't know how it happened, but I really got interested into that stuff. But sadly, I had no opportunity to touch computers or do anything, by that time. So when I passed out of my high school, the education system in India, it is like you will have to spend 10 years in school. After 10 years, you will have to spend another 2 years. It is called pre-degree or +2. Then you will have to go for graduation, which is again 3 years. After the graduation, maybe if you wish to, you can go for post-graduation. So that is how it works in India. I don't know the international standard, but in India, it is the way to, way for formal education. After passing my high school, I got into the, the +2 stage, like where we'll have to spend another 2 years in the school. I chose computer science as my subject, in those two years. So I was very good at math. Then I became very good at programming language. That's where I got studied C and C++. I was very much interested into that. Other students, they used to by heart the program line by line, but I always wrote the program from my mind. That was too easy for me at that time. I was not good at other subject, but I was very much good into computer science and all those stuff. So later I got after the 2-year +2 period, obviously we'll have to go for graduation, right? At that time, my family they did not have enough money to send me into a proper college, which is near my home. Then I had to waste 1 year in learning some other courses and stuff like that. Then I got accepted into a college for doing a graduation in computer science for 3 years. So there again, I met some awesome teachers in there. They were very good at this programming and everything. So I got to learn a lot of stuff. Part-time, I had a couple of part-time jobs. I used to service computer hardware. I used to install computer software and stuff for, as a freelance job. So that's how I made money for my other activities. Then I get to study a couple of, at that time, if you remember, at that time, during 2007 to 2010, there were many computer networking and, computer administration and networking courses are there, right? So I got into a couple of courses, in my free time after my, I used to work. I used to study in college. Then I used to take a couple of classes based on computers, because at that time, that was the only way to get a job, right? So after graduation, anyway, we'll have to get a job. So there is no other shortcut. You'll have to get a job for your family. So that is the ultimate aim. I didn't know that even that ethical hacking or cybersecurity can be an option, can be a real job for me, right? At that time, we did not had that opportunity to explore that option. So I studied all these courses during my graduation as a part-time. So when I completed my graduation, the center, the institute, they were offering these networking courses. They asked me to teach there. They were finding it very hard to get someone who can teach these ethical hacking and some certification courses. So then they paid for my certification. Then they took me as an intern to teach there. I stayed there for 1 year. So during that time, I learned what stuff I can, from many resources. At that time, we don't have the luxury of a high-speed broadband connection or something. I used to download, the web pages in 4 days. Then I used to write it in a rewritable CD. Then I used to read all these blogs and stuff, in my free time. So that's how I spend most of the time in there. So from there, I got into a startup. So that is where I learned most of my skill set. I did even case and capping or placement of Cat5 cables, wiring, proper networking, then system administration, networking, penetration testing, all these stuff. We used to do everything in there. So that those 4 years, that's where I learned most of the things. Then I got a job into a company called EY as a security analyst. I used to do web application penetration testing, cloud infrastructure, offensive security related activities, everything in there. Then I joined another company called Nissan Motor Corporation as a deputy manager for cybersecurity, where I used to lead the offensive security activities and internet red teaming. Then I got into another US-based, fintech company. Right now, I'm managing offensive security operations and adversary simulation for this company. So the point is, many people used to ask me, right? How do I get started in cybersecurity? I'm not from a computer science background. I'm not from this background. I don't know that. I don't know this. But if I can, from having no electricity to managing offensive security operations for a global company, I have achieved this in, let's say 15 to 16 years, right? So I think I'm an average guy. If I can do that, everyone can do that. So that is my point.
A great story. That's interesting to hear. We've communicated over the past year, but I know that story about you. So that's kind of very cool to know more about your background and how you got started. So going through all that, what would you recommend for people that are trying to get started out in pen testing? Because you've seen what works, what was not necessary. You've educated people. So you have a really good background. And I think that you would have some great information on that. So how would you recommend someone get started out now based on your experience?
So right now, compared to 15 years, compared to 10 years, like right now, we have a hell lot of information, hell lot of resources, right? We have very, very great people. I always think like, what if I had, met Phillip Wylie at least like 10 years before? So my path would have been different. My suffering would have been much, much less, right? So we would reach our goal in a much, much lesser path, right? So my point would be, there are a lot of people in the industry who are willing to help, who are glad to help, who has much more resources and knowledge, and they are willing to share their knowledge, right? So it would be always better to, ask for help. Find a mentor who can guide you through the process. Even if you are not coming from a technical background, people can guide you through the actual path, right? So that is a very first thing. And second thing would be, learn whatever you can. Like, it is not like I am not into radio, then I don't have to learn anything about radios. I'm not into, let's say, I'm not into mobile phones. I'm not into wireless devices. So don't think that. Learn anything which comes into your path. At least have an overview of everything. So that is going to help you, not today, not tomorrow, but sometime in the future. So that is the second thing. And third thing would be having curiosity for everything, having curiosity to understand how things are working, how this is going to be if I'm making a couple of changes, and stuff like that. So this is the three major thing I would suggest for the people who are coming in the industry. If you are following these 3 points, eventually you will get into the right path. That is for sure.
Very cool. One of the things I want to ask you too, because I know you have this background, and one of the things, there's a couple of questions I always ask everyone. And one of those is, you have the programming background. Do you think someone starting out needs to know how to program to be a pen tester?
Sure. They can do that, because right now there are two kinds of pen testers. One, they have ideas, right? They know how to use tools. They get that tools, and they use it based on their methodology and their skill set and experience, and they find results. Then there is a second kind. They always write their own tools and scripts and get these things done, right? So if you are familiar with programming languages, then there is always you will be always having an upper hand, because being in a technical background, always it will give you an upper hand all the time, because you have a certain background and a base you can build on top of that, right? So that is going to be easier. And if you are very good at programming, there are certain areas in cybersecurity where you could focus on, like exploit development. That is getting huge, right? So certain areas are there where you could shine.
Very cool. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to get everyone's opinion on whether you need to know how to program or not, because actually I had Alyssa Knight on, which really kind of surprised me, because Alyssa Knight told me that, she doesn't know how to program. So it's just interesting to hear different people's backgrounds, so that's very cool. Another thing people commonly ask is, what about degrees and certifications? What do you think people need there that would be required to be, a pen tester or offensive cybersecurity professional?
I think when they are getting started, it is always good to have certifications, right? So certifications always ensure from a hiring perspective, the certifications always ensure the candidates possess certain knowledge which is listed under a certification, right? So that is one thing. But personally, I'm not a big fan of certifications. I more focus into trainings. I used to attend whatever trainings that I can attend, till date. So that is where I should be. I mean, if I'm hiring someone, I would hire someone with more skill set than more certifications. So that's, both things has its own merits and demerits. But nowadays people are more looking into candidates with skill set. So that's the main thing.
So what about degrees? Because people always ask, do I have to have a degree to be a pen tester?
Yeah, dear Philip, that is still a problem in India. So here it's like, if you want to get hired in a MNC or at least a company, company with a good reputation, you as a basic requirement, they still mandate to have a degree in something. I mean, not specifically computer science, but to have a degree in, some areas. But things are getting changed in a very slow manner. But still, I mean, from my understanding, and from my experience, my own experience, because I used to have backlogs for some time, and when I used to appear in interviews, and I used to get rejected many times only because I am not having, I did not clear my backlogs. I did not clear my graduation. Then I had to, study and clear all these backlogs so that I would get a job in a, reputed company. So that is still a sad story, but things are still changing very slowly, and which is good for everyone.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting here. Like some of the big four consulting companies here in the US, like last year or the year before last, dropped the 4-year degree requirement. They used to always require 4-year degrees. And so, the need of cybersecurity professionals, needing so many people and not be able to find the talent, they kind of waived the 4-year degree requirement here. So one of the things that's awesome about your background, I really want to share, because one of the things I share with people trying to get started and people I mentor, that volunteering at conferences, speaking at conferences is a good way to network and a good way to help you get jobs in the industry. And there's so many benefits. So since you really have a lot of experience in that area, could you share kind of your experience there? Because I know you've kind of hosted a different couple different, founded and hosted a couple different villages and stuff, even for the upcoming DEF CON. Could you share that experience?
I'm gladly I can do that. So I would say something. So there are many jobs, many industries, and many professions, right? Many people they consider that as a job only. Some people do that because they love that job, or because of their passion. So there is a big thing, big time thing. When it comes into cybersecurity or hacking, that is totally a mindset. The job part, that is the second one. The mindset comes first. So you need to have ultimate passion towards hacking, right? You need to love hacking. You need to love cybersecurity. You need to love how things are working. So that is most important thing. And the security conferences, capture the flag games, and other events, that is the people who spend more time or who finds time to do the conference activities, to contribute to the community or contribute to the information security events. I personally believe, they have huge passion or huge love towards the security industry, towards their job, towards the hacking industry, right? So that is one thing, because from a hiring perspective, people are always looking for not only the skill set and how much they are willing to contribute. Like, if they are contributing to the InfoSec community, that means they are really into this stuff. They really love their job, right? So that is one of thing. And second thing would be, you need to meet a lot of awesome people, right? You need to mention a lot of awesome people, awesome mentors, and you get to learn a lot of stuff from the conferences and virtual stuff and everything. Because I would say something, from the pandemic, we have been staying in our home for like 1.5 years right now, right? I would say that compared to the past couple of years, I have learned more stuff in this 1.5 year during the pandemic, because too much online conferences are happening. A lot of people are doing free training, free talks. They're sharing a huge amount of content with respect to cybersecurity. I would say I learned a lot of stuff during this pandemic from the online conferences and stuff. And again, for the beginners, it would be a very good place to show up in conferences and contribute to information security communities. It is better for their career, and it is better to improve the skill set. That is my personal opinion.
And from your experience, is it easier for you to find jobs since your involvement in conferences? Has that helped you find jobs?
Yes, obviously, yes. I get a lot of calls from hiring people from the conferences. I would say there are two big conferences in India. One is called COCON and NULCON. Both of them are running for the past 10 plus years. So we used to visit there. I mean, all the uh, big companies, they'll be having hiring booths in there, right? And if you get to present something, if you get to organize something, or if you are winning a CTF, obviously you will be getting a call from companies, and they are always behind skill set. I always received a lot of calls and emails regarding job offers.
That's great. And as you mentioned, the pandemic, that was a lot of great opportunities. I mean, I know for myself, I got to speak at a lot more conferences virtually because, before in the past, when you had to travel in person, it was limited to your travel budget, how many conferences you could speak at, and be able to speak at multiple conferences on the same day has been kind of a neat experience.
Yeah, that is a great experience.
So yeah, so for some of our listeners may not be aware of it, but you founded and you're running the Adversary Village at DEF CON this year.
Yes, sir. Yes. So that is something I find more fascinating, because I could tell you an example about, because a lot of people are asking me about adversary simulation and related stuff, why we are coming up with the idea of adversary village, right? So I would tell you something, because I know that you come from a background of wrestling, right? So I would share an example similar to a martial art. So when I was in primary school, I used to get bullied big time, because in order to get bullied, there is no reason, right? I mean, to get bullied, right? I was weak mentally and physically, and my poor mother, she decided to take me to a karate class. So then I practiced karate for a long time, and I'm a proud honor of. I proudly hold a brown belt in Shotokan and full contact karate. So that is, I will tell you an example based on karate. Like, so when you go to the karate dojo, when you join a class, the very first thing they will be doing to teach you how to take a fall or how to deal with a fall. That is a very first thing, right? I mean, even if someone bullies you or even if someone attacks you, your chances are you're going to fall, right? The very first thing they will be teaching you is how to take a fall. Second thing would be hardening. Like, you need to use your hands and legs as weapons, right? So in order to do that, you need to harden your weapons, harden your legs, hands, knuckles, elbows. You need to get some muscles in your body, stuff like that. So after that, they will teach you combinations of attacks. Let's say, punches, back punch, front, middle punch, upper punch, then the blocks, upper kicks, lower kicks, stuff like that. So I can relate each attack to a tactic, adversary tactic. Let's say if you are doing a middle punch, right? Or if you are doing an upper kick, or if you something like a Mawasagiri or something. So that can be a tactic. Once you are learning this punching, individual punching, blocking, and stuff like that, you get into katas. So which is a combination of all these attack tactics. In a katas, there would be 20 to 30 different movement, right? So you get to start from a defending someone, then you get to punch someone, then you need to make a kick. I mean, it's a combination of 20 to 30 different attack movements. So I used to call that as a scenario, attack scenario, right? Then you get to spar with someone, maybe someone from the dojo, maybe your friend, maybe your colleague, right? So you get to spar with him or her, like, just to try out your attack tactics, like, how to defend a punch, how to throw a punch, how to start a kick, stuff like that. Once you are familiar with all these steps, maybe if there is a tournament or even a street fight or even someone tries to bully you, you can deal with it pretty easier because you have been through a lot of stuff, right? You have built up your strength. You know how to take a fall. your arms and legs, they are hardened. They know different type of attack tactics, attack scenarios. You are fighting with your fighting partner regularly. Then when it comes into a street fight or a tournament, you can deal with it pretty easily. So right now we can move into the aspect of red team and blue team. So we can consider the street fight or the tournament as a red team engagement. If you are weak and you get engaged in a street fight, chances are you are going to get bullied. You are going to get bashed up, right? So the same for organization. If an organization is having not a very good security posture, and if they are going for a full scope red team engagement, there is no point in that. So that organization is going to get bullied very hard, right? But when it comes into adversary simulation, so you're constantly trying to find your weaknesses and trying to improve it. Maybe if you are not good with your upper kick, you get to practice that with your front again and again and again until you fine tune your kick. Then you take it to the tournament. Then you take it to the street fight, right? So I would use this example to differentiate between adversary simulation, the place in adversary simulation between blue teaming, cyber defending, and offensive security, which is the red team part. For example, adversary simulation, that is just mimicking the actions of an adversary or a threat actor, right? For example, if you are attending a tournament, you know that how your adversary, he is coming from a different karate dojo. These things, there are certain attack tactics this guy is going to be using, right? So in that case, we can compare that into threat intel based adversary emulation. You know the actions of that adversary, and that adversary going to attack you in the next couple of months. You analyze that based on threat intelligence, right? So I always used to, compare adversary simulation with, a martial art. Again, when it comes into adversary simulation, there are different terms, in the field. Adversary simulation is there, adversary emulation is there, breach and attack simulation is there, adversary attack simulation is there, purple teaming is there. So maybe we can compare these different terms to different type of martial arts. Like we have karate, we have kickboxing, we have jiu-jitsu, but the purpose of every martial arts is the same, right? Improve the person, make them defend themselves, make them secure themselves, right? Similar to that, all these terms, adversary simulation, emulation, breach and attack simulation, they are all kind of the variants of the same approach. That is what I want to say. And the community advisory village, we aim to improve, or we aim to, technically our advisory village is a community which focuses on advisory simulation, emulation, advisory tactics, a bit of purple teaming, the advisory life, advisory philosophy, and related terms. So that is a purpose of this community in here. And there is one more thing to add. The initial goal of the advisory village would be to build an open security community for the researchers and organization who are putting together new methodologies and tactics for adversarial attack simulation. And somehow we got accepted into DEF CON. And right now, so far, we got a couple of nice talks, workshops, and panel discussions. And personally, I think this is going to be very cool to be in DEF CON this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And congrats for getting selected for DEF CON. I really like the comparisons you make to martial arts, because what really fits in there too is you think about purple teaming. That's a good comparison, because if you're different types of punches and kicks, if you learn how to defend against those, that's pretty much what you're doing in purple teaming, learning to detect and defend against certain types of attacks. So that's a really good analogy. That's a good comparison.
Yes, sir. Because since you are also coming from a martial arts background, you get to see the resemblance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really a good comparison. I've heard people use different analogies, but that's probably one of the best, because you figure cyber warfare is a lot more comparable to real world physical combat. So that's a really good comparison. So we're coming down to the end of the show. Is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners that maybe we didn't discuss during our conversation?
Like nothing more. I think we covered pretty much everything, right? And Philip, I really appreciate the invite for this to be in your podcast. This is really a privilege for me.
It's an honor to have you, and thank you for taking your time. I know it's a different time zone and a little more difficult to coordinate, but I appreciate you joining us, and congratulations again for being selected for DEF CON, and thanks for joining. And
thank you, Philip. Thanks a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks everyone for joining this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Reversing Labs is the leading provider of explainable threat intelligence solutions that dissects complex file-based threats. Its hybrid cloud titanium platform enables digital business resiliency, detects new high-risk threat vectors, and automates SOC and threat hunting processes. Learn more at reversinglabs.com. Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of our on-location conversation. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itsbmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.